Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel, and in the video today we're looking at why lead used to be added to gasoline. Tetraethyl lead was used in early model cars to help reduce engine knocking, boost octane ratings, and help with wear and tear on valve sets within the motor. Due to concerns over air pollution and health risks, this type of gas was slowly phased out starting in the late 1970s and banned altogether in all on-road vehicles in the United States in 1995. For a more detailed explanation of why lead used to be added to gasoline, it's necessary to understand a little bit more about gasoline and what properties make it a good combustion material in car engines. Gasoline is a product of crude oil that is made of carbon atoms joined together into carbon chains. The different length of the chains creates different fuels. For example, methane has 1 carbon atom, propane has 3, and octane has 8 carbon atoms chained together. These chains have characteristics that behave differently under different circumstances. Characteristics like boiling point and ignition temperature, for instance, can vary greatly between them. As fuel is compressed in a motor's cylinder, it heats up. Should the fuel reach its ignition temperature during compression, it will auto-ignite at the wrong time. This causes loss of power and damage to the engine. Fuels such as heptane, which has 7 carbon atoms chained together, can ignite under very little compression. Octane, however, tends to handle compression extremely well. The higher the compression in the cylinders a car's motor can produce, the greater the power it can get out of each stroke of the piston. This makes it necessary to have fuels that can handle higher compression without auto-igniting. The higher the octane rating, the more compression the fuel can handle. An octane rating of 87 means that the fuel is a mixture of 87% octane and 13% heptane, or any mixture of fuels or additives that have the same performance of 87 to 13. In 1919, Dayton Metal Products Co. merged with General Motors. They formed a research division that set out to solve 2 problems: the need for high-compression engines and the insufficient supply of fuel that would run them. On December 9, 1921, chemists led by Charles F. Kettering and his assistants Thomas Midgley and T.A. Boyd added tetraethyl lead to the fuel in a laboratory engine. The ever-present knock caused by auto-ignition of fuel being compressed past its ignition temperature was completely silenced. Most all automobiles at that time were subject to this engine knock, so the research team was overjoyed. Over time, other manufacturers found that by adding lead to fuel, they could significantly improve the octane rating of the gas. This allowed them to produce much cheaper grades of fuel and still maintain the needed octane ratings that a car's engine required. Another benefit that became known over time was that tetraethyl lead kept valve seats from becoming worn down prematurely. Exhaust valves in early model cars that were subject to engine knocking tended to get micro welds that would get pulled apart on opening. This resulted in rough valve seats and premature failure. Lead helped fuel ignite only when appropriate on the power stroke, thus helping eliminate exhaust valve wear and tear. The potential health issues with tetraethyl lead were known even before major oil companies began using it. In 1922, when plans for production of leaded gasoline were just getting underway, Thomas Midgley received a letter from Charles Claus, a German scientist, stating of lead, "It's a creeping and malicious poison," and warned that it had killed a fellow scientist. This didn't seem to faze Midgley, who himself had come down with lead poisoning during the planning phase. While recovering in Miami, Midgley wrote to an oil industry engineer that public poisoning was almost impossible, as no one will repeatedly get their hands covered in gasoline containing lead. Other opposition to lead came from a lab director for the Public Health Service, a part of the US Department of Health and Human Services, who wrote to the Assistant Surgeon General stating that lead was a serious menace to public health. Despite the warnings, production on leaded gasoline began in 1923. It didn't take long for workers to begin succumbing to lead poisoning. At DuPont's manufacturing plant in Deepwater, New Jersey, workers began to fall like dominoes. 1 worker died in the fall of 1923, 3 died in the summer of 1924, and 4 more in the winter of 1925. Despite this, public controversy didn't begin until 5 workers died and 44 were hospitalized in October 1924 at Standard Oil's plant in Bayway, New Jersey. The Public Health Service held a conference in 1925 to address the problem of leaded gasoline. As you would expect, Kettering testified for the use of lead, stating that oil companies could produce alcohol fuels that had the benefits that were provided by lead, however, the volumes needed to supply a growing fuel-hungry society could not be met. Alice Hamilton of Harvard University countered proponents of leaded gasoline and testified that this type of fuel was dangerous to people and the environment. In the end, the Public Health Service allowed leaded gasoline to remain on the market. In 1974, after environmental hazards began to become overwhelmingly apparent, the Environmental Protection Agency announced a scheduled phase-out of lead content in gasoline. One way manufacturers met these and other emission standards was to use catalytic converters. Catalytic converters used a chemical reaction to change pollutants like carbon monoxide and other harmful hydrocarbons to carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water. Tetraethyl lead would tend to clog these converters, making them inoperable. Thus, unleaded gasoline became the fuel of choice for any car with a catalytic converter. The requirements by the EPA, emission control mechanisms on cars, and the advent of other octane-boosting alternatives spelled the end for widespread leaded gasoline use. Manufacturers soon found cars could no longer handle such a fuel, public tolerance of the environmental and health hazards would not allow it, and it became cost-prohibitive to continue producing it. On January 1, 1966, the Clean Air Act completely banned the use of leaded fuel for any on-road vehicle. Now, this hasn't completely gotten rid of leaded gasoline though. You are still permitted to use it for off-road vehicles, aircraft, racing cars, farm equipment, and marine engines in the United States. And now for a bonus fact. Since the reduction of leaded gas in the United States, the average level of lead in the blood of Americans has decreased by over 75%. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. There's a button on the screen as well as below the video. Also, if you liked this video, why not check out some of our other videos that are over there on the right, and thank you for watching.